Well, Trump is starting to pick all his future indictees, all the people who are soon to be indicted. I'll go over all the names of these individuals who will be lawyering up pretty soon, going broke, and destroying their marriages. I'll go over all of that on today's show in a second. But as this new administration starts to take shape, I'm reminded of what Karl Marx once said. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce. I think this time around it repeats itself as just more tragedy. Darren Woods, the CEO of Exxon, said he hopes Donald Trump will not keep his campaign promise to pull America out of the Paris Climate Accords. Now, you might remember Trump pulled out during his first administration. We returned under Biden, and now Trump is threatening to pull out once again. According to the New York Times, Woods, the CEO of Exxon, spoke at the UN Climate Summit in Baku, Azerbaijan on Tuesday, and he said if America backed out of the treaty, it would make it impossible to establish a global system for managing carbon emissions. The Times says that Exxon urged Trump not to pull out of the accords back in 2017, but he did it anyway. His Secretary of State at the time was Rex Tillerson, who left his post as head of Exxon to join the Trump administration. Rex Tillerson is reported to have once screamed at the top of his lungs while serving in the White House, "Donald Trump is an effing moron." Donald Trump announced he's named Vivek Ramaswamy, speaking of effing morons, and Elon Musk to head a new department of government efficiency, which promises to be as efficient as Twitter and Vivek Ramaswamy's presidential campaign. Elon Musk said yesterday, quote, "This will send shockwaves through the system and anyone involved in government waste," which is a lot of people. Well, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world thanks to Barack Obama's Green Initiative stuffed inside the 2009 stimulus bill, offering loan guarantees to green startups like Tesla. Had it not been for Barack Obama, had it not been for the federal government, Tesla wouldn't exist. And if it weren't for the government, Musk would have nobody to sell his rockets to. The Department of Government Efficiency is essentially, how do we find the largest pool of government cash and transfer it all into my pocket most efficiently? Billionaires do not make government run efficiently. They loot government. Speaking of government waste, Donald Trump last night announced he would nominate Fox News imbecile Pete Hegseth as his Secretary of Defense. Hegseth is highly critical of America's involvement with NATO. He believes our military is being destroyed, demolished by the woke mob. Really, it's the woke mob. I thought it was bullets and artillery shells. What do I know? In 2019, CNN reported that Hegseth advised Donald Trump to pardon several soldiers who were convicted of war crimes. And Donald Trump, despite warnings from his then Defense Secretary, Mark Esper, went ahead and pardoned 2 soldiers convicted of war crimes and restored the rank of one Navy SEAL who had been demoted for his behavior. An Army veteran, Hegseth served in both Iraq and Afghanistan and was awarded 2 Bronze Stars. His National Guard unit was deployed to Washington, D.C. to provide security during Joe Biden's inauguration, but Hegseth was ordered to stand down after he was discovered to have a tattoo linked to a far-right extremist group and militia. An arch-conservative, Hegseth has called radical Islam a bigger threat to the world than climate change. He once accused Democrats of inventing the COVID variant Omicron in order to win the 2022 midterms. He called for the bombing of Iranian cultural sites if they are storing weapons there. 5 years ago, he accused Palestinian-American Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of having a quote-unquote Hamas agenda. And because he's religious, Hegseth has been married twice and had one child with his mistress while cheating on his first wife. But worst of all, he's a graduate of Harvard and Princeton. Donald Trump says it's finally time a MAGA loyalist and hack is trusted with our nation's secrets. Well, that will be something new. Politico reports this morning that Trump will nominate his former director of national intelligence to head the CIA, and that would be John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe, you might remember, during the first Trump administration, replaced Dan Coats. That was Trump's previous director of national intelligence, Dan Coats, who quit right around the time Donald Trump threatened to hold up a shipment of arms to Ukraine unless President Zelensky dug up dirt on Joe and Hunter Biden. Dan Coats, this would be Trump's director of national intelligence, later told Bob Woodward that he has no doubt Vladimir Putin is blackmailing Donald Trump, that Putin has something on Trump. Well, Ratcliffe now will be the director of the CIA. He'll be the head of the CIA. Before joining the Trump administration in his final year, Ratcliffe was a Texas congressman and loyal MAGA flunky who called Russiagate a hoax and even suggested that Vladimir Putin interfered in the 2016 presidential election, but only to get Hillary Clinton elected. Trump's New Jersey strip mall attorney is rumored to be his pick for press secretary. That's right. Talk about not wanting to answer questions without a lawyer present. I'm not sure Alina Habba actually is a lawyer. I don't know. Alina Habba, Donald Trump's New Jersey strip mall attorney, is now rumored to be his next press secretary. You might remember Lena Habba lost Trump's civil fraud trial this year. At one time, she was literally playing to an imaginary jury, forcing Judge Arthur Engoron to tell her, "There's no jury here. It's just me." You might want to consider wrapping it up right now and perhaps going home and reading some legal texts. Habba, however, said it's more important to be pretty than smart. Well, that's why Trump now owes the state of New York $500 million, which is pretty large and must really smart. Trump names Nome, South Dakota governor and bloodthirsty dog killer Kristi Noem will be nominated to be Donald Trump's new head of Homeland Security. They have drug-sniffing and bomb-sniffing dogs over there, don't they? Well, do you see the pattern here by naming Kristi Noem to head Homeland Security, or this guy Hegseth to the Defense Department? It's straight out of Project 2025. Trump's going to be running the executive branch right out of the Oval Office. He's placing sinecures like this cretin, Kristi Noem, in charge of the government agencies that he will eventually try to wind down. And that's how you destroy our government from within. You put worthless people like Kristi Noem in charge of Homeland Security. By the way, Noem is being sued by the consumer advocacy group Travelers United, which alleges that as governor, she got free dental work from a Texas dentist in exchange for her promoting him on her social media account. And according to the lawsuit, she didn't disclose the quid pro quo. Wow, a governor accepting free dental work in exchange for free advertising? Hard to believe Donald Trump would appoint someone so ethically challenged. This is the mop-up for November 13th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thanks so much for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. And of course, please share it. That's the best way to help me, especially now. Please share these episodes. I got a lot to get to today. If there's time, I will go over why Kamala Harris lost Michigan, but Elisa Slotkin, the down-ballot Democrat in Michigan, was elected to the Senate. I think I have the numbers to make a pretty good case that the reason is Gaza, but I don't want to do a really long show. I'll get to it. There's a lot to go over. Former Vice President Mike Pence says he prays Trump doesn't pardon the January 6ers. That'll help. Yeah, keep praying. Dave Weigel over at Semaphore reports that former Vice President Mike Pence told Democratic conservatives he prays Trump won't pardon them. Weigel reported that Mike Pence doesn't believe the American people will allow Trump to remove the guardrails of democracy. So, there you go. What is Donald Trump's biggest sin? What is the most unforgivable thing that Donald Trump has ever done? He's made me miss Mike Pence. The judge in Steve Bannon's New York fraud trial, which is scheduled for December 9th, the judge said on Tuesday she would not grant his lawyer's request for delay. Bannon was indicted on charges of defrauding donors to his charity that was created asking people to give money to build a wall along the Mexican border. Prosecutors say Bannon stole $15 million from that charity. Federal prosecutors 4 years ago went after Biden for this, but Donald Trump, on his last day in office, pardoned Bannon for this crime. Because presidential pardons only apply to federal crimes, New York State immediately took over the case and charged Bannon pretty much with the same crime. Bannon served as Trump's campaign manager in 2016. He also served 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress after refusing to answer a subpoena from the January 6th committee. He was released from prison late last month. New York Judge Juan Merchan on Tuesday agreed to delay sentencing for Trump's conviction in a Manhattan criminal court after he was found guilty of hiding hush money payments to a porn star. You might remember Trump was convicted in May on 34 counts, and he was scheduled to be sentenced on November 26, but the judge now says the election results have forced him to reconsider the next step, as well as reconsider whether we're actually a nation of laws. Trump is the first president ever to be convicted in a criminal courtroom. So, many of you keep asking me, how is it possible that a convicted felon was allowed to vote in Florida? It's a great question. Florida law only prevents felons convicted in the state of Florida from voting. So if you were convicted in another state like Donald Trump, in Florida, you retain your right to vote. Now, nobody is quite sure if the Supreme Court's immunity ruling applies to the Manhattan criminal conviction, since it's not a federal trial, and Trump is going to appeal it, and he's going to argue, based on the July ruling from the court, that because he was paying hush money to a porn star, that falls under the official duties as president under that protective umbrella. Trump tried to get this trial bumped up to a federal courtroom, hoping he could get elected and then pardon himself. The courts turned down that request, which means it remains a state conviction. And while Trump can appeal the jury's ruling, he will never be able to pardon himself. Was he ever going to go to prison for this? No. They were elevated misdemeanors. They were crimes, but from what I understand, nobody really goes to prison for what he was convicted of. The Supreme Court on Tuesday ruled that Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, must be tried in Fulton County, Georgia. Like Donald Trump, Meadows tried to get his indictment severed from the state court and bumped up into a federal one where conceivably, if convicted, Trump would be able to pardon him. But Meadows, Trump's White House chief of staff, was denied that yesterday by the Supreme Court. It stays in Fulton County. He was indicted, you might recall, along with 18 others, including Donald Trump, by the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis. That trial has been postponed until March, when an appeals court will decide whether Fani Willis must step aside after being accused of conducting an inappropriate relationship with her lead attorney. She was reelected last Tuesday, and that trial is happening with or without her. Lawyers for Mark Meadows argued that because Meadows was working for the executive branch when the alleged crimes of election interference were committed, his case should therefore be tried in a federal court. But a lower court and now our Supreme Court agreed that the crimes Meadows is charged with were unrelated to his job as White House chief of staff, which suggests Jack Smith's election interference indictment charging Donald Trump, all those charges were unrelated to Donald Trump's official job as president. But that case is now on hold. So the Supreme Court and the lower courts seem to be protecting Donald Trump, but not so much his enablers. That's something his next chief of staff should keep in mind. Trump may be immune when he gives an order that's illegal, but following an illegal order is a crime. His new chief of staff will be his co-campaign manager, Susie Wiles, and she should remember this. Little piece of trivia about Susie Wiles. She is the daughter of CBS Sports broadcasting legend Pat Summerall. This is true. Trump always respected Pat Summerall for how he called NFL games, the way he called pro golf tournaments, and for his nerves of steel after seeing Arnold Palmer naked in the shower. Former New York Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin will be nominated to gut and destroy the Environmental Protection Agency and then turn it over to the fossil fuel industry. Trump's new border czar will be former ICE director Tom Homan, seen here enjoying an ISIS beheading video. Homan is famous for saying, "I have to pay for sex." That's what he's known for. You know, Harry Truman said the buck stops here. Thomas Homan, former ICE director, new border czar, he's famous for saying, "I have to pay for sex." This is the guy who came up with the idea of separating families at the border. Take a good look at this face. As Donald Trump would say, straight out of central casting. I mean, who else looks the part to play the lead role in turning ICE into Gestapo, into our Gestapo? Who else looks the part to play the lead role in turning ICE into our Gestapo? This guy, Stephen Miller, that's also straight out of central casting. And Stephen Miller is back. Miller ran border policy during the first Trump administration. He not only supported and pushed for separating families, he once asked during a meeting, seen here, this is a photo of Stephen Miller at a White House meeting. He asked, was it possible to order our Navy to shoot a boat filled with migrants? This was a boat that was heading to our country. And Stephen Miller, seen here in a White House meeting, asked, can we shoot the migrants in that boat? White nationalist and neo-Nazi Richard Spencer said he and Stephen Miller became close friends when they both attended Duke University. And neo-Nazi Richard Spencer insists that Stephen Miller was greatly influenced by him. Don't flatter yourself, Richard Spencer. Stephen Miller was influenced by his mirror. That's what influenced his view of the world when he looked in the mirror. Like most of the supplicants around tyrants, Stephen Miller looked in the mirror, hated what he saw, realized he was uglier on the inside. How is such a thing possible? He realized, I'm uglier on the inside, and decided everyone had to suffer just as much as I do. Dr. David Glosser is Stephen Miller's uncle. During the Trump administration, the first one, Dr. Glosser wrote a piece for Politico entitled, "Stephen Miller is an immigration hypocrite. I know because I'm his uncle." Dr. David Glosser wrote, quote, "I have watched with dismay and increasing horror as my nephew, an educated man who is well aware of his heritage, has become the architect of immigration policies that repudiate the very foundation of our family's life in this country," unquote. Stephen Miller will be right under Susie Wiles. He will be running policy out of the White House. He's deputy chief of staff. Earlier, I said Project 2025 said they wanted to bring the entire executive branch into the Oval Office. And Stephen Miller will be running not just policy, but the executive branch for Donald Trump. He will be very powerful inside Donald Trump's White House. It won't be the head of the CIA, that idiot from Fox News running the Defense Department, or Kirsty Noem running Homeland Security, or even Homan being the border czar. It's going to be Stephen Miller. It's all going to be centralized out of the Oval Office. Keep an eye on this homunculus, Stephen Miller, who, I mean, can you make a better case for abortion than Stephen Miller? I mean, what's a better case for abortion than Stephen Miller? I suspect his parents rue the day the condom fell off. Mike Huckabee is expected to be named by Donald Trump as America's ambassador to Israel. Huckabee loves Israel almost as much as he hates Jews. This is David Huckabee, Mike Huckabee's son, who, according to Michael Isikoff of Newsweek and Snopes, is alleged to have killed a stray dog while he was a counselor at a Boy Scout camp. David Huckabee is alleged to have taken a stray dog and strung it up on a tree. And the question from this, I'm being serious, and I've reported on this, the question is not whether he killed the dog in front of Boy Scouts. The issue is whether the dog needed to be put down. That was what his father said, that it was a very sick dog that needed to be put down. Well, if you're going to put a dog down, do you string him up? I thought you were supposed to put him down. Do you string him up in front of kids, Boy Scouts, to watch the dog die, allegedly? You know what? I guess that's a question better left for America's new soon-to-be Director of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. I'm sure she could sink her brand new and completely paid-for teeth into that one. And no, she didn't have an affair with Corey Lewandowski. Remember Vanity Fair reported that? She didn't have an affair with Corey Lewandowski. First, they're both married, and second, they denied it. Marco Rubio, the Florida Republican senator, is expected to be nominated for Secretary of State. Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman said he would vote to confirm Rubio. Rubio is bad, but he's not the worst of them. And I always said, politically speaking, he would have been a better pick for vice president than J.D. Vance. I always thought Rubio understood policy. I don't agree with him on pretty much everything, but he is sharp. He is smart. So they're going to be sending him all around the world. The one halfway decent person in this administration will be jetting all over the world, won't be able to do anything to save us. Rubio is an outspoken hawk in the Senate. He has been on China policy. He served more than 10 years on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which means, unlike everybody else in this White House, he knows what he's talking about. Reelected in 2022, he would leave open a seat with 4 years still left on it. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will pick his replacement. Now, because DeSantis flamed out as a presidential candidate, and because Florida law prevents a governor from serving more than 2 consecutive terms, there's talk DeSantis might name himself as Rubio's placement. Really? You can name yourself? Pretty soon Donald Trump will start pardoning himself. Who knew you could do that? But MAGA loyalists are urging the Florida governor to appoint intellectual firebrand Lara Trump to fill Marco Rubio's Senate seat. Lara Trump, imbecile, is married to Eric Trump, imbecile, and she served as co-chair of the Republican Party, where millions and millions of dollars were funneled into mysterious LLCs that nobody's quite sure who owned those LLCs and what the money was spent on. I can't imagine. Who do you think? Who do you think owns those LLCs? Congressman Mike Waltz has been tapped for National Security Advisor, which means soon we will all be tapped. Like Rubio, Waltz is considered a China hawk. Not sure who the guy on the right is, but obviously he's more concerned about picking something way more important than our next national security advisor. Yeah, just digging in there. Rounding out Trump's foreign policy disaster will be New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. She's going to be our next UN ambassador. She's leaving Congress, but don't worry, Washington's loss will be the world's loss as well. There are just 7 weeks left for the 119th Congress, which returned yesterday. Tuesday was freshman orientation for new members of the Senate, and it was hosted by outgoing Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who said because 100,000 votes still remain to be counted in Pennsylvania, he was not yet willing to concede Democratic incumbent Bob Casey's loss to Republican hedge fund manager Dave McCormick. Schumer said that is why Dave McCormick will not be getting an invitation for orientation. But McCormick was outraged and said, I'm showing up for orientation anyway, even if I'm not invited. Schumer then backed down and said he could attend. Outgoing Republican governor of West Virginia, Jim Justice, will replace West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, seen here being held by Jim Justice. That's a good picture of Joe Manchin, isn't it? That is Jim Justice holding. I think he's performing the Heimlich maneuver on Joe Manchin. During yesterday's orientation, Jim Justice was told, this is true, that his bulldog baby dog, who some of you might remember appeared at the Republican National Convention, Jim Justice was told he will not be allowed to bring baby dog onto the Senate floor, which means Republicans will continue to blame the funky stench on Maine Senator Susan Collins. With just 7 weeks left, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will try to confirm 32 judges, but may get resistance from outgoing Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema and outgoing West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who both left the Democratic Party this year because they're a-holes. Good riddance to them. So far, Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer got 213 judges confirmed. They're hoping in the next 7 weeks to beat Trump, who got 234 judges confirmed during his first 4 years. Earlier, I mentioned the disgusting Arizona Senator Sinema. Well, there's some good news. The disgusting Kari Lake has officially lost the Arizona Senate race to Democrat Ruben Gallego. There's good news. You might remember the disgusting Kari Lake lost a tight race for governor 2 years ago, but she continues to claim voter fraud. With Gallego getting 50% and the disgusting Kari Lake getting 47.8% of the vote, this time around, Kari Lake's defeat is way more resounding. This morning, the Arizona Republic reports that Kari Lake won't concede, and she has been promoting posts on social media that say something doesn't smell right about this election in Arizona. Yeah, Gallego won, but Harris didn't. I'm starting to agree with Kari Lake. Donald Trump is scheduled to meet with Joe Biden later today in the Oval Office, where Biden will attempt to teach Trump the definition of the words peaceful transition. Melania Trump turned down an invitation from Jill Biden for a traditional visit to the White House. Melania was reportedly insulted after she informed Jill Biden that her standard appearance fee is $350,000, and it was immediately rejected. How could they not offer Melania $350,000 to appear at the White House with Jill Biden? What were the Bidens thinking? Donald Trump is expected to meet with Republican leaders before his meeting with Joe Biden today. Speaker Mike Johnson meets with Trump at Mar-a-Lago privately over the weekend. Trump's first test of how much control he has over his party, well, the first test will be in the race to replace Mitch McConnell for Republican leader of the Senate, which, because of their new majority, is also going to be a race for Senate Majority Leader, a post that McConnell once held. McConnell turns 83 in February, so he's staying in the Senate, but like Nancy Pelosi, he's stepping down from his leadership position. Trump hated Mitch McConnell. We know that. He hated Mitch McConnell and still does. The race for Senate Majority Leader now comes down to 3 Republican senators: Texas Senator John Cornyn, South Dakota Senator John Thune, and the disgusting Florida Senator Rick Scott. Thune is the current whip, and he is who Mitch McConnell wants to replace him. But Trump, along with Elon Musk and Marco Rubio, are lobbying hard for the disgusting Florida Senator Rick Scott. The problem for the disgusting Rick Scott is everybody in the Republican caucus hates him, secretly and not so secretly. Now, Trump can work the phones and lobby Republicans in the Senate, but this is going to be different than the race for House Speaker. In the House, there's an open ballot. The Senate race for leader, secret ballot. So there's no way to physically intimidate Republicans the way Jim Jordan tried last year when he ran for Speaker. If Thune ends up as Senate Majority Leader, it's not great, but at least he resembles something like an institutionalist. You do not want the disgusting, repulsive Senator Rick Scott, who stole $1 billion from Medicare and Medicaid. You do not want him as a Senate Majority Leader. Elections for the Democratic House leadership are scheduled for November 19th, and nothing is expected to change for the top three leaders. There is an important race underneath these three top leaders, which we'll get to in a second. Hakeem Jeffries, who represents New York's 8th Congressional District, replaced Nancy Pelosi 2 years ago as the Democratic leader in the House. By all accounts, especially me, he was expected to become the next speaker. I assured you that he was going to become our next speaker, but while it's pretty much certain Republicans will keep control of the House, it's also pretty certain Hakeem Jeffries will remain House Minority Leader. Why? Because he represents New York's 8th Congressional District in New York City, specifically Brooklyn. He has access to plenty of Wall Street cash that he can spread around. Catherine Clark, the Democrat from Massachusetts, is expected to keep her post as House Minority Whip. And California Democrat Pete Aguilar is also expected to stay on as chairman of the Democratic caucus. But there are other positions within the House Democratic leadership, and one of them is the race for Battleground District Representative. There's a post. It's called Battleground District Representative. It's a key post within the House Democratic Party caucus. If you are the Battleground District Representative, you speak for House Democrats whose seats will be targeted by Republicans in the 2026 midterms. And yes, there will be midterms. Right? There will be midterms. I'm not going to say it. So the Battleground District Representative in the Democratic Party worries about purple districts. These are seats Democrats fear could turn red, and who the House Democrats pick for this leadership post will serve as a referendum on what went wrong last week. What went wrong? Now, I'm refraining from pointing fingers. I'm still in mourning. I'm beginning to point fingers, but I'm still processing what happened. So who the Democrats pick for the Battleground District Representative, it will be a referendum on what the party did wrong. Did the Democrats not capture the House because they ran too far to the left? Or did they run too far to the right? Corporate donors, political consultants will try to convince House Democrats that they lost because voters perceived them as out of touch elitists who only care about woke issues, like the transgender people. But we know, and yes, I'm pointing fingers, but this is the only finger I'm pointing right now. We know it wasn't woke issues. It was Democrats lost because they're perceived as elitists. That we know. And why are they perceived as elitists? Because they don't fight hard enough for the poor and the working class. That's what an elitist is. An elitist isn't somebody who's hyper-educated and overly sensitive to LGBTQ issues. An elitist is someone who, I have a lot of money, I'm better than you. That's what elitism is. And voters pick up on that. So if you don't want to come across as elitist, if you want to curry favor with the working class, the middle class, poor people who all vote, you got to make it worth their while. You got to give them free health care, free universal daycare. You got to forgive student loan debt, which Biden tried and has done. The effing Supreme Court blocked him on that. we need a new Green Deal. Did I mention Medicare for all? And an end to fighting in Gaza. That's the winning message. The winning message is we're going to raise the minimum wage. We're going to literally put more money in your pocket. Not cut taxes. Yeah, I'm not going to go over the platform. I wrote up, I'm not going to do it today because I promised myself I wasn't going to point fingers yet. But go look at the Democratic Party platform, what Kamala Harris was running on. And you tell me if that appeals to half this country that can't come up with $500 for an emergency. The winning message, Medicare for all, free health care, free universal daycare, free tuition at all public universities, a new Green Deal, end the fighting in Gaza. That's the winning message, but it only benefits voters, not the donors or the consultants. So, where are we? Okay. I'm going to spend the rest of the show discussing Michigan, Gaza, and Democrats. And I'm going to show you why I think, whether you agree with Joe Biden's Gaza policy, politically speaking, I'm going to make a very strong case that Harris lost Michigan because of Gaza. And I'm not making a moral judgment. This is math. Math has no morality. No politics with math. But first, this is the mop-up for November 13th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I appreciate it. A couple people are angry at me. And so thank you to my listeners who are staying with this show. And thank you for supporting it. Please share it. I need listeners, so please share these episodes. Yes, and buy worthless garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com, like this Trump coffee mugshot. It's a coffee mugshot of Donald Trump posing for the Fulton County Sheriff. This is a souvenir from the 2029 inaugural ball. It's Melania and Donald Trump. It's not too soon to get ready for Trump 2028. There will be an election. Why not pick up a campaign mug, Trump 2028, if you're going to the inauguration? Please, I urge you, pick up an official Trump fart filtration mask. It's what the pros use. Well, on January 6th, MAGA Republicans carried an appeal to heaven flag into the Capitol. Samuel Alito's wife flew an appeal to heaven flag over their house. Pick up an appeal to these nuts flags. Help me conquer the 7 mountains of society. You can get an appeal to these nuts flag over at shopdavidfeldman.com. That's what I'm going to be flying. An appeal to these nuts, or a Still a Democrat. That's Cassidy modeling our Still a Democrat t-shirt, or you can get a Still a Democrat coffee mug. And this is my favorite, Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream, and my big seller, which everybody needs for Thanksgiving. It's a chef's apron with the words, "I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." Okay. 8 international humanitarian aid groups issued a statement on Tuesday calling the situation in Gaza now the most dire ever since Israel began its war with Hamas after the October 7th, 2023 invasion. There are still as many as 60 hostages still believed to be held by Hamas. Hamas is using the hostages as bargaining chips for a ceasefire. Israeli protesters are demanding and taking to the streets, urging a ceasefire, insisting a ceasefire is the only way to bring the hostages home. But talks between Israel and Hamas have completely broken down, with Hamas's senior leadership all assassinated. Funny how that works. It's hard to negotiate if you kill all your opposing interlocutors. The nation of Qatar, which has served as the home base for some Hamas leadership as well as a diplomatic partner, has reportedly ordered the leaders of Hamas out of Qatar. Qatar says it will no longer serve as a mediator since both sides are refusing to negotiate. Meanwhile, several of the top humanitarian aid groups in the region are accusing the Israeli military of starving Gaza. President Biden and his Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on October 12th said Israel had exactly 30 days to make sure humanitarian aid would flow into Gaza. Otherwise, they would cut off military aid. Interesting timing. That would be October 12th. Election day is November 5th, and Biden gave Israel until November 12th before he would cut off military aid to Israel. Interesting how the calendar worked out that way, isn't it? Well, a month later, the humanitarian aid groups say the situation has worsened in Gaza, but President Biden announced America will not suspend military aid to Israel. Israel insists it's allowing some humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza, but much of it, they say, is stolen by Hamas, criminal gangs, and general lawlessness. I think general lawlessness is been tapped by Donald Trump to become the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, general lawlessness. According to The Guardian, the UN confirms that 1/3 of all humanitarian aid sent into Gaza does fall into the hands of Hamas or criminals who refuse to disperse it. The UN also confirms there's a shortage of drivers willing to bring trucks into Gaza, humanitarian trucks. A lot of people don't want to drive trucks into Gaza. This is why. The Guardian reports humanitarian organizations say 600 humanitarian aid trucks are needed in Gaza every day. 600 aid trucks, do the math, 600 aid trucks are needed every day in Gaza. Last month, according to The Guardian, only 57 trucks entered each day. The United States demanded 350 trucks be allowed in each day as part of this ultimatum. But military aid to Israel continues. On March 14th, 2024. By the way, I'm telling you what other people are saying. I'm trying to be objective here. Okay? On March 14th, 2024, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the highest-ranking Jew in Washington, Chuck Schumer, took to the well of the Senate on March 14th of this year and announced that it was time for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to go. This is what Chuck Schumer said, quote, Nobody expects Prime Minister Netanyahu to do the things that must be done to break the cycle of violence, preserve Israel's credibility on the world stage, and work towards a two-state solution. At this critical juncture, I believe a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel. He then warned, now he's the Senate Majority Leader, he said, quote, "The United States will have no choice but to play a more active role in shaping Israeli policy by using our leverage to change the present course if Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't go away." That was in March. Okay. It's been a week since Donald Trump won the state of Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan has one of the largest Arab populations per capita in America, per capita. And the majority of voters in Dearborn are Arab American, and they are represented in Congress by Rashida Tlaib. She is the only Palestinian American serving in Washington. Tlaib, a Democrat, refused to endorse Kamala Harris, and she warned Joe Biden earlier this year that her constituents will remember Gaza in November. Well, the results are in. So I'm doing math here. I'm doing math and politics. I'm not saying what side is right or what side is wrong. I'm talking about the politics of this situation, the math of this situation. And I believe in politics. I don't think there's anything wrong about politicizing a humanitarian crisis. I believe in the only solution to the Middle East is politics. Hamas has a military wing and a political wing. Hezbollah has a military wing and a political wing. Politics and military. You bring peace through politics. Politics is not a disgusting word. Politics is the only solution. Here's the math and the politics. The results are in. Donald Trump carried Dearborn, Michigan. It's incredible. I don't know what the numbers are on this. I think it's been more than 20 years, more than since a Republican carried Dearborn, Michigan. According to The Intercept, Trump got 43% of the vote in Dearborn, Michigan. Harris only got 36%, and Jill Stein got 15%. There was a movement in Dearborn. Trump is no good, so vote for Jill Stein because of Gaza. So Harris got 36% of the vote. Rashida Tlaib, the Democratic Congresswoman, was reelected with 62% of the vote. She got 26% more than Harris. I think I got that right. By the way, Arizona also has a large Arab population, Arab American population. Harris lost Arizona, but just like in Michigan, the Democratic Party's down-ballot Senate candidate won. Gallego won, Slotkin won in Michigan. Gallego won Arizona, Slotkin won Michigan. The Intercept reports that Donald Trump has said in the past that he wants Netanyahu to, quote, finish the job in Gaza. And I played you that quote when he was campaigning in Michigan. Politico reports that many Arab American residents of Dearborn feel like they've been redeemed. That's according to the Dearborn City Council president, Michael Sereni, who said they wanted to send a message, and they did. So, Here's what I think happened in Michigan. The Democrats, and possibly Arizona and elsewhere, and I'm just going over the math and the politics here. The Democrats refused to allow any Palestinian Americans to speak at the convention, not even Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. We heard a lot of speeches that week all about inclusivity and the importance that all marginalized groups be seen and heard. And yet Palestinian Americans, Arab Americans were invisible. I'm not saying this is the reason, but it's one of the reasons Harris lost Michigan. Maybe the reason, maybe the reason she lost Arizona. Let's take a look at the math. I'm going to make a pretty good case. It is the reason. I'm talking math. We know the Democrats lost the House, presidency, and the Senate because they don't listen to the people they ask to vote for them. They don't listen. They don't listen. Let's go big here. Alyssa Slotkin. Okay, this is the final results. This is Wayne County. Okay, Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat, won the Senate seat in Michigan, beating out Republican Mike Rogers. Harris lost Michigan. But how did Alyssa Slotkin perform in Wayne County? That's where Dearborn is. Just going over numbers here. Slotkin wins with 63.4% of the vote, getting 531,614 votes. Even though she wins Wayne County, with its large Arab American population. I'm talking about Harris. Even though she outperforms Slotkin, who won, Trump outperformed Mike Rogers, the Republican Senate candidate, by about 20,000 votes in Wayne County, a heavily Democratic district, okay? So I'm just going to show you this. If you want to get your calculators and check my math, Slotkin gets 531,000 and some change. Mike Rogers gets 267,000 and some change. This is how Harris and Trump do in Wayne County. Harris gets 5,000 more votes than Slotkin in Wayne County, and she wins Wayne County. Okay? So if you want to use numbers, you can make a case, Kamala Harris wasn't affected by the Arab American vote in Wayne County. She actually got more votes in Wayne County than Alyssa Slotkin. She got 5,000 more votes in Wayne County. So she wasn't affected by the vote. Well, statewide, Kamala Harris lost by 97,000 votes. That's a lot. Statewide. Harris lost Michigan. So let's do the math. Okay? Statewide, Harris lost Michigan by 97,000 votes. In 2020, Biden won Michigan with 2,804,040 votes. Trump lost with 2,649,852 votes. So here's the deal. Trump did beat Biden. In 2024, Trump did beat Biden's 2020 number by about 8,000 votes, 8,000 and change. Well, actually, it's a little closer. It's 9,000 votes. It's closer to Do the math. It's 8,887 votes. Donald Trump outperformed Joe Biden in Michigan in 2024 by 8,887 votes. We know the Democrats stayed home in 2024. Trump outperformed Biden in 2024. He outperformed 2020 Biden by 8,887 votes. Biden gets 2,804,040. Trump gets 2,812,927. And that gets you to 8,887 votes. So now, how important is Wayne County? How important is Dearborn, Michigan? How important are those Arab American votes? 8,887. Democrats stayed home this time around, and they stayed home in Michigan. All Kamala Harris had to do was improve on Joe Biden's margin by getting 8,888 votes. One more, fellas. I just need one more than 8,887 votes. And she would have won Michigan. Do you think Gaza kept people away? Huge Arab American population in Arizona. Does this partially explain Arizona? This is why I love politics. It's why I believe in democracy. It's why I don't believe politics is a dirty word. It's why I don't apologize for politicizing mass shootings, war, or mass starvation, or anything. Politics is the only answer. There is no solution to the Middle East other than politics. As I said earlier, Hezbollah is also a political organization. It gets elected in Lebanon. Hamas is also a political organization. It got elected in Gaza. The Bush administration didn't like that Gaza won, that Hamas won in Gaza, but Hamas is a political organization. The reason I love democracy and politics is eventually you must stop litigating the past and litigate the present. And that's what a fully functioning democratic republic does. Here in America, it's quite obvious what we think. It's complicated, but you don't need to know when the clock starts in the Middle East, when history begins. Did it start with the Nakba or the founding of Israel? Did it start with the White Paper, the Balfour Declaration? Did it start with the fall of the Roman Empire? You don't, here in America with politics, you don't need to relitigate the past and decide when the clock starts, when history began. Politics isn't complicated. You vote. And here in America, people know that Israel has a right to defend itself, that what happened on October 7th was wrong, but they're also sickened by the slaughter in Gaza. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason Harris lost. I'm not saying it's the only reason she lost Michigan, but it's certainly one of the reasons. It's certainly one of the reasons she lost Arizona, which has a large Arab American population. So we can argue all we want about who's better for the Palestinians. Trump, there's no question he's a fascist, and he said Netanyahu should finish the job. But he's also a politician, and he knows good politics will be a ceasefire in Gaza by any means necessary. Good politics is litigating the present and telling Israel enough. War is bad politics, and politics is the answer, not war. Politics is the answer, and war is bad politics. Woodrow Wilson got reelected with the slogan, "He kept us out of World War I." Then he got reelected, and he got us into World War I. Eisenhower got elected saying, "I will go to Korea," meaning he would end the fighting over there that began under his predecessor, Harry Truman. And Eisenhower won by a landslide. LBJ also won by a landslide in 1964. Then he sent more than 500,000 boys and women to Vietnam. By 1968, he limped out of the Oval Office. He couldn't run for re-election, despite giving, he was re-elected in 64, Medicare, Medicaid, the Head Start, the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 65. Vietnam. Nobody said to Lyndon Johnson, you're a mixed bag, but, so we're going to forgive you on Vietnam. It's bad politics, but I gave your grandparents free health care, Medicaid, for the health care for the poor, the Civil Rights Act. I sacrificed the South. I turned the South over to the Republican Party no. Vietnam. War is bad politics. And you can argue, you did this to me and I did that to you, and it goes all the way back 3,000 years. The American people don't want it. They don't want war. Nobody is going to get elected saying, I will get us into a war. Nixon won in 68, lying, said, I have a plan to end Vietnam. The plan was to bomb Cambodia. That was his plan. We can go back and forth on Gaza. Israel has a right to defend itself. The Palestinians in Gaza were left to rot, and October 7th was their only option. Yes, the hostages must be free. We can go on, relitigating the past. The only way to litigate the present is through politics, and war is bad politics. It's bad politics. The American people don't like it. Believe it or not. $1 trillion a year on defense. But we don't like war. Name one president who got elected saying, we will salt Carthage. Can you name one president who said, you elect me and we are going to destroy Carthage? Name one president. Joe Biden will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents because he ended America's 20-year nightmare in Afghanistan. It was, I believe, one of his, if not his greatest singular accomplishment. Now, the Republicans insist he bungled it. That's why Trump went to Arlington on the anniversary of Biden pulling out of Afghanistan. He wanted to draw attention to the American soldiers who died on our way out. There were 13 American soldiers who died while we were getting out of Afghanistan. And Trump, as well as the Republicans, politicized their deaths. It's an example of how incompetent Joe Biden was. Well, let me ask you, I'm sorry about obviously the 13 soldiers and what's happened since we left. But given what you know about this war in Afghanistan, given that the Taliban never attacked us on 9/11, given what we all know about the war in Afghanistan, politically speaking, if Joe Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan in 2024 instead of 2021, if Afghanistan was still fresh in our memory, how do you think Joe Biden would have polled? How do you think Kamala Harris would have polled? I'm not sure. But I do know his polling suffered after Afghanistan. I suspect if he pulled out this year, his poll numbers would have suffered. But I think the American people on Election Day would have elected Kamala Harris because, yeah, Afghanistan was bungled, but at least we're out of Afghanistan. Peace, in the end, is good politics. Nobody ever got elected in America promising to take America to war. Donald Trump ran as the peace candidate. As the peace candidate. Because no president ever gets elected promising to take America to war. And yet, we seem to be in a permanent state of one. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for sticking with me. This has been the mop-up for November 13th, 2024. Please go to Shop David Feldman and pick up the Trump mugshot coffee mug, the 2029 inaugural ball mug. It's not too soon to start working on the Trump 2028 reelection campaign. Pick up a mug. If you're going to the inauguration, the Trump fart filtration mask. I got to do a better job at this. And an appeal to these nuts flag, the I'm still a Democrat t-shirt, I'm still a Democrat coffee mug, my favorite, Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. Boy, I can't believe I don't get a job on QVC selling. And my favorite, I already pitched that. What is that? I'm not present right now. I'm not here. What is this? It's the I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Chef's apron. Some of this stuff is a little upsetting to talk about. So my mind wandered when I was trying to sell garbage that you don't need. Thank you to Bob and Mila for keeping the conversation going in the chat room, keeping it civil. I read all your comments. I do. You know that I do. So keep them coming. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button and do all the things that I ask you to do. Thank you. I will see all of you in 48 hours. Thank you.